We're live.
Mind right, game tight, elevate your mind sight. These interviews will ignite your insight. Take notice of the lessons we learned. Why? So you can focus on shining your light bright. We share our greatness and we're courageous. Listen closely because it is contagious. Hit the subscribe. The show's worldwide. Keep an open mind and treasure yourself to shine.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Mind Right Game Tight Show. I'm your host, Michelle Morgan. I'm a transformational sports coach, which means I work with student athletes on the mindset, not just in sports, but in life as well, because I like to say we're going to spend a lot more time in life than we do in sports. I am also the founder of Vida Soto, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering our young adults and student athletes to acknowledge and embrace their self-love and continue to shine their light and out throughout all areas of their life. I also created the Mind Right Game Type program, which consists of 2 books, a book and a workbook titled How You Triumph in Sports, Tools That Create a Triumphant Life, going over the different life skills that we're learning while playing sports, from being accountable, being coachable, goal setting, loving yourself, and then the workbook, the exercise, implement all those different things. For more information, you can go to www.vidasoto.org. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest for today. Our guest today is Krystal Williams. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and yoga instructor, graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from an HBCU, Prairie View A&M, as a student athlete. Krystal then went on to earn her master's of art degree in counseling in psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy from National University, where she completed most of her clinical training with foster youth, women of color, LGBT+, and other marginalized communities. Krystal's mission is to serve BIPOC communities towards body compassion, healing their relationship with food, and finding the path to their authentic self. So thank you, Krystal, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
You're welcome. All right. So I know that you mentioned in your bio that you did graduate from an HBCU, Prairie View A&M, as a student athlete. But I know you when you first got to college. So you kind of had a couple of pit stops along the way. So I just want you to share your journey of what was that like for you in terms of your student athlete journey and experience.
Yes. So let's see. I guess I can start with how I even became an athlete. So story. We were in 8th grade. They gathered all of the 8th graders together in the auditorium. And I guess all the different high schools, like faculty was there to kind of just talk us about just preparing us for high school. So anyways, they passed out a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper it said, check off some of the, activities you might be interested in going into high school. And so me and my friends gathered around, and next thing you know, I was like, what are you putting down? What you putting down? Okay, I guess I'll put that down. Volleyball, basketball, track. Okay, you're doing it. I guess I'll do it too, right? And so that was literally my introduction to sports. I never picked up a basketball, I never picked up a volleyball, none of that stuff until literally the following year when I went into high school, where I started to play basketball, volleyball, and track. And that was literally, honestly, like my introduction, and I fell in love with it. And my father was the basketball coach, and which was lovely. It was lovely. I love volleyball, track, not so much. I was like, the only thing I loved about track, honestly, was just going to the track meets. And like, other than that, I'm like, I don't want to be outside. Let me go inside. Right. And so I really dedicated my career to basketball, honestly, and even volleyball. So I would practice, before practice, after practice, on the weekends. I just really just engulfed myself in the sport. I ended up getting a scholarship to San Francisco State. And I ended up redshirting that particular year, and it was mind-blowing. It was amazing. Just meeting so many people. you're one of them. And and just really just learning a lot just about the sport, about leaving home for the first time. After that, there was not really sure where the direction was going to go with my scholarship at the time. And the program was kind of uncertainty of where the program was actually going to go after my freshman year. And so I decided to go to a junior college, which was Mount San Antonio College in Pomona, California. And so I went there for 2 years and really learned a lot about, even more so about myself, about pride, about competition, and just uniting as a team. And so my sophomore year, I guess my second year at JUCO, I got injured, and I ended up having 2 knee surgeries, and I was devastated. And I was like, man, I really love this sport. What am I going to do now? And so, I had amazing coaches at my JUCO, which connected me to a coach at Prairie View A&M. And I ended up getting a partial scholarship there, even with an injured knee. And so I went there to a HBCU. It was a phenomenal experience. It was something that, it's one of those things where you don't know that you needed that experience. Like, I was there, and it was beautiful to see so many shades of Black all in one space. When you've gone to a predominantly like white institution and then you go to an HBCU, the vibrations there is just so different. And I didn't know that I needed that. And, to really embrace just the culture, my culture, and just learn from so many great coaches that was there. And it was just an amazing experience. So there were some ups and downs there, but that's how I got. That was kind of literally like my introduction. And then, I graduated and moved on with my career in a different way.
So backing up, because you mentioned that your dad was your coach, and
Yes.
some people can relate to having their parent as a coach, which can sometimes,
Yes.
like, what was that experience like with your parent being a coach? Because, sometimes that can go either way, right? But what was your experience? And what did you learn from that as well?
My experience was actually pretty well. My dad really made a point to separate home from the sport. And which is really crucial. When we went home after a game or after practice, we never talked about sports. We never talked about my performance. So it was really, dad is at home, and also, coach is, between the hours of 3 and 6. Mm-hmm. And so it was great to have him even initiate and say, no, we're separating this. This is, I'm your dad here. We're not going to talk about sports when we get to the house. I would say that my freshman year was a bit of a challenge because of, navigating that with the other teammates. And so there was, assumptions of favoritism, and, would look at me some type of way, and not really recognize, my own personal athletic ability to be able to earn my spot in certain positions. And it wasn't influenced by my dad, putting me into the game. So navigating that was a little bit difficult my first year. But after that, I think the team really shifted, and where we kind of bonded over just being teammates and really encouraging each other, really wanting to build each other up, regardless of position, regardless of talent, so to speak, right? And so And my dad, as well as the other assistant coaches, really did push that too. So, so it was great.
But you like take your position as being the child, did you ever try to push boundaries or like get away with things like as being like the child of the coach, like anything like that?
I really didn't, to be honest with you. I respected my dad in his position, and he believed in me, like, and he pushed me. And so I never felt, this need to be like, oh, I know I could get away with that, because I knew him, he wouldn't allow that, And so, the only thing that I would say that I would push a particular boundary is because my dad also worked at the school. So I saw him all the time. And so that would be the only time I would actually kind of push a boundary, where I'd be like, I'm getting out of class and I'm just going to say I'm going to go visit my dad. I'm going to push that envelope. Or
where are you really going?
Doing things, just here and there, Or I'd be like, Dad, like before a game, I'd be like, he was like, hey, Krystal, did you eat before this game? Like, no. He's like, here goes some money. I'm like, yes. All right, I'm about to go to like McDonald's right now. Go give me something to eat, because I knew he was going to give me some money. Like, that was the only time I really did push any type of boundary. But on the court specifically, no, not at all. Yeah.
And then when you got to San Francisco State, did you already know you were going to redshirt before you got there? Or like, how was that process of even redshirting? Were you thinking you were going to go in and play, or like, what did that look like, coming into a new program and, wanting to play and all that stuff?
For sure. SATs, I graduated with like a 3.8, but I did not meet the scores or this in order for me to actually play collegiate ball. And so that's really honestly what held me back from playing my freshman year. And so I ended up redshirting. And so I knew, and the coaches knew, that I wasn't going to play as soon as I got my SAT scores. And so that's honestly kind of like what kind of held me back.
Gotcha. And then what about like, you're at Mount Sac and you had the injury, like what was a mental mindset that helped you like progress through that or see through that, because it can be devastating, right?
It took years. I'm not even going to lie to you. It took years. I've never experienced that type of injury before. I had 2 knee surgeries, and this was at the latter part of my second year at JUCO. And so you're already starting to get recruited to go to a 4-year university. And so I was scared. I was terrified. Like, I'm not going to get recruited. And what does this mean for me with recovery? And so, so I'm afraid that I'm not going to go to a 4-year. I'm afraid that I'm not going to recover in time. So it's a lot of pressure. And just mentally, I was just, again, exhausted, jealous, jealous to seeing that my other teammates were, getting recruited, or seeing my teammates being able to still be able to participate in sports. And it hurt. And, I was really grateful for the coaching staff at Prairie View for taking a chance on me. And, with going out there, it was still mentally taxing, because I'm seeing other people play. I'm in there and I'm like, I'm on the bench or going through rehab. And I'm saying to myself, like, gosh, come on, body, like, figure this out, like, hurry this up. Time is ticking, and I deserve to be out there. And so it was a lot of judgment on my body for not healing fast enough. It was an ego check also as well when it comes to that. So it was a lot of things that took place. And so it took me, honestly, even past like physical recovery for me to really kind of get back into the groove. And what was I going to say? Something about like my senior year is kind of when I started to really connect back with my body, connect back with my mind, and saying that like, you have this, you got it. Let's finish this senior year out with a bang.
Did you have any mentors helping you like tell yourself, like help guide you in terms of like see this thing out and like change your mindset? Like how do you even help yourself do that?
I think my teammates in a way, that has experienced injuries, but I think the most mentorship that maybe I've gotten or advice, I guess, at the time was just keep it up. Try to be consistent with it. But not really, to be honest with you, which is unfortunate. And I didn't think I had the language at the time to ask for it either. And be really specific about what type of support that I needed. I think looking back during that time, it would have been beneficial for me if I had the language that like, hey, just for a little bit, I need someone physically there with me. Throughout my career, starting from high school, like my dad was right there. But also I was okay with like going to the gym by myself, putting on this, this tape to help me like shoot or to go through different type of drills. I could do that independently. But when I got injured in that particular way, I realized that like, no, I really physically needed somebody to be there. And so to help me and to encourage me, just words of affirmation, and even just doing some of the drills with me. And so, but again, I didn't have the language and to ask for that. And I don't know if the supports that was around had that capacity to. But maybe if I would have asked, it would have been there.
Gotcha. And then while you were a student athlete, what made you decide to go into criminal justice? Like, what was that? Why did you go? And like, was there a goal at the end of it that you wanted to pursue a career or?
No, not at all. So here's the thing. I actually, originally, my major was nutrition. So when I went to school, first, when I went to San Francisco State, what did I do? I majored in kinesiology. And the reason why I did that is because my dad, I love my dad so much. I respect that man so much. And he was like, yo, like do physical therapy. Like it's great. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get to do that. I love that. I get into kinesiology. I'm like, I hate this. This sucks. I don't like it at all. And so
that's my major.
I don't like this at all. And so next thing you know, like, I was hanging out with my friend. I was like, yo, because she seemed like she had her stuff figured out. And I was like, yo, like, I need help. And she was like, well, you love food, Krystal. And I was like, I do. And she was like, I was like, well, nutrition is a thing. Like, I want to learn a little bit more about food and like the science of it and X, Y, and Z. And so that was my major. And so the way I believe that credits are ran when you are transitioning from JUCO to a 4-year, it gets kind of muddled in some type of way to where when I went to Prairie View A&M and I couldn't have that same major and also get the scholarship to play basketball because I didn't have enough credit, so to speak, to transfer with that major. And so it was encouraged for me to go and switch to criminal justice. So that was really hard to do. It was really, really hard. I loved basketball. I was already injured, but I'm like, yo, like I can try to recover. Basketball has been my identity since I was 14. And so I'm like, yeah. So it was a hard decision to make. And I end up switching over my major to criminal justice. There was some parts of it that I really enjoyed, and there was some parts of it that I really didn't. So that's how I ended up graduating from Prairie View with a criminal justice degree.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is like a really good point that you hit on, because I think also as student athletes, we're so focused on like when I get the scholarship, I want to continue playing at the next level. But it's also important to ask those coaches and see, like, really take a look at my transcripts to see like what is it that I want to pursue academically, and seeing how that's going to transfer over as well. Because to go from, well, nutrition, kinesiology, and then it's like, well, I guess I got to take criminal justice. It sounds like I might as well go take something that I really want. I think that's important to know that before you get into it, rather than maybe potentially feeling stuck, like, well, this is my only option, or whatever happened through the recruiting process. Like, this is where I got to go. So this is just one of those tips that we're learning here on the Mind Right Game Tight Show, is having those transcripts and asking those coaches who are recruiting you, knowing what you potentially may want to major in, and see how those credits that you have are going to transfer over into the school that you can potentially go to. So that's definitely something key to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely.
So then moving forward, you got your criminal justice major, but then you decided to major in get a master's in counseling and psychology. So when you got that counseling and psychology master's degree, was it your goal to be a therapist at that point? Like, did you want to do that, or was there some sort of scheme behind the scenes that was forcing you into this?
I know. I feel like I have, like, anything with my relationship with like school, it's already been that. I went back into school because I needed to. I always say that if you're stuck in life in some place, go back to school and learn something. And so I went to school to learn something with no intentions of being a therapist. And so I was like, no, that's not for me. I'm just here to buy time until I figure out what the heck I want to do with my life. Never thought that I would be, years later in private practice and really like enjoying it. And I think that's where I receive an abundance amount of mentorship. The teachers there, the professors, were so amazing. I am still connected to them to this day. And I know that I can call on them right now, be like, yo, like, I need some help here. And they're like, okay, here you go. So I was there, and again, no intentions. But the mentorship, they're like, you need to be here. Like, this is your lane. You're a healer. Stay here. And so with their mentorship, their guidance, and the support with the other classmates, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I grew into it and grew into loving it and feeling confident and knowing that, hey, this is my purpose. This is where I need to be. So, yeah.
Gotcha. And so when you're going through, can you just walk me through like understanding, like becoming a therapist? So you're going through a program, and at some point you have to get hours until you apply for your license. And then I know we mentioned in the intro for you that then you also went to do your clinical training, like with foster youth, women of color, LGBT. So tell us like the transition of like that process to get your license, and then why you chose, or did you purposely choose those communities to work with for your clinical training?
Yeah. So when you get your master's degree, before you graduate, you have to do like an internship. And so that's roughly about like 200 hours. And typically the school will give you like a list of different, agencies that you could potentially work with, or you can go find agencies on your own. So my strategy was to connect with agencies that was local, give me some place that I can actually drive, because I was still working full time. At this particular time, I was working at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. And so I was connected with them, and I asked like, hey, can I do my internship here? I'm like, I'm already working here. Come on. And they're like, no, we don't have any openings at the time. Okay. So I had to go venture off for somewhere else. And so after that, I went on to work at an adult daycare center for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. And that's where I got my clinical hours to graduate, because you need about like 200. After I graduated, then you need an additional 3,000 hours before you qualify to take your clinical exam. So the 3,000 hours can take between like about 4 or 5 years, depending, And so,
Wait, so you're not able to get paid to be a therapist yet, then, while you're doing the additional hours, right?
You can. I was lucky enough to find, after I graduated from college, after I graduated from grad school, I was able to actually find a internship that would pay me. But honestly, some of them don't. And so that's where I landed working at an actual group home.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was already working in the foster care system already at the LGBT center. And then I ended up working full time at a group home in Pasadena, California. And so I spent majority of my clinical training there, gained my hours, my 3,000 hours. And after that, I was qualified to take the exam. And so the exam is about 4 hours long. It took me about 6 months to study for that exam. And I passed on the first try. I'm so happy that was over, but I passed. And so, yes, so I passed the clinical exam, and then that made me officially a licensed therapist in the state of California.
Woohoo. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of hours involved, it sounds like, in pursuing a career as a therapist. So what advice do you have for someone who like to pursue a career in therapy, whether if it's questions to ask prior to choosing a school to study at or choosing where to earn their clinical hours at? Like, what type of advice do you have just going through that process? Because in total, how long did this process take you?
About 6-7 years. Total, I would believe it's about like 6 or 7 years. I would say that be patient, reach out to a licensed therapist for mentorship and guidance. Give yourself some grace, because it does take some time, and you will go through the period discouraged sometimes, because you're like, 3,000, I'm only on 100. I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to get there. The light will come. And also offering that there's different ways on how you can get your clinical hours. I got my hours, working at a group home, working in the foster care system, but you can also get your clinical hours working in like a private practice or like a group practice. And so, and also to be curious. I think that when you're getting your clinical hours, especially you're going to be spending a huge chunk of time, you can definitely explore other populations that you might be curious about. So, hey, I was working with teens for quite a bit. And then it's like, I want to give adults a try. Hey, I really want to work in the LGBT population. Hey, I really want to work in domestic violence population. Oh, I want to work with victims of crime. Or, hey, I want to work with infants. Or I want to work with moms. Or the sky's the limit. So I would say be curious and don't be afraid to explore while you're getting your clinical hours.
And then while you were getting your clinical hours, were you ever like challenged by an experience throughout your internship? And then like, what did you learn from that?
I think the challenges that I experienced is feeling of helplessness or hopelessness. When you're working with marginalized communities and you see the systemic barriers that is put in place, and you are coming in to heal and to help and to guide and support. And when you see those particular barriers, it can totally just have you feeling really helpless and hopeless sometimes. And I have definitely left feeling really discouraged and angry and saddened. And, what I learned from that is recognizing my own feelings that comes up, because oftentimes I would been channeled to push my feelings aside in a particular way, but it was okay to be upset. It was okay to recognize some of the systemic barriers that is taking place in these with services, and so with certain communities. And so with looking at that, like, how can I be the change that I want to see? And if that change that I want to see is with this individual person, then that's where I'm going to thrive to go to, right? And push my energy in that perspective, and be an advocate to be able to speak out and speak up, and even encourage some of my clients and colleagues to be able to do the same as well. And so that's where I got into a lot of trainings, to be able to train a lot on LGBTQ community, specifically in the foster care system. Became a trainer in harm reduction approach, and now also training in body compassion, body image, and body empowerment. So really taking that and saying that, like, hey, I can be the change that I want to see, and what do I have to do, and what community, that my allies that's around me, that we need to rally in order to make change happen. So again, either that change happen for that individual, or just for the agency, even what I'm working at. So that's kind of, the gist.
So when you talk about the change that you want to see, what was a change that you made within yourself?
The change that I made within myself, I would say, is shifting my perspective on how people may be experience behaviors. So I was introduced to a model that's called trauma-informed care. And in a gist, it's like a perspective shift. It's a perspective shift of looking at an individual, and instead of saying, what's wrong with you, to what happened to you. So with that particular perspective shift, it allows space for curiosity, understanding, and empathy, instead of judgment and criticism. So I learned that a lot. And with that particular perspective allows me to see humans in such a different way. And that has carried on not only in my professional life, but also in my personal life as well.
And then how do you separate your work sessions from taking it home with you? I can only imagine. So how do you separate that? And so that you're not carrying it with you. And then obviously how you interact with just people in your life outside of work.
Yeah. It's so interesting. According to my wife, she would probably say that I'm always a therapist 24 hours. But I would have to say that I have my own therapy. I see my therapist every week in order to have a space for me to unload. I also recognize that, hey, I have multiple identities, and that it's okay for me to take off this particular therapy hat and bring on, goofy, or even though I bring that to sessions anyways, energetic, or any of those particular perspectives into just my daily life. Also too, have to recognize that I hear different than probably other people because of my perspective. So I have to check myself sometimes. And it was like, Krystal, you're not a therapist right now. This is your homegirl. You know what I mean? And so.
But do you think your homegirl came to you because you are a therapist though? I mean, if you think about it.
Honestly, I think that because I feel like I have, I feel like my purpose is to heal. And I think that even prior to me being a therapist, looking back, is that I have been the center to where people felt invited to, share whatever was coming up for them with me. So I think that it goes beyond the profession, to where that, people feel, again, connected in order to say that. And I'm sure that when people do hear, especially strangers, I'm like, oh, I'm a therapist. They're like, okay, well, let me tell you. I'm like, I'm off the clock, but I got you, you know? So,
Yep.
But yeah, I know. But yeah, so, but that's kind of how I tend to separate it. Again, like I hear differently because of my training. But for the most part, I try to check myself. I see my own therapist, and I try to release the energy that I'm taking on from my clients after session by moving my body, washing my hands, doing certain rituals to kind of just like, okay, this is the transition.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, so even in therapy, there are stigmas around therapy, right? So can you debunk one of those stigmas right now about therapy?
Let me see. That you are weak if you go to therapy. You know, I think it's going on those things where, you know, we're really conditioned, especially in communities of color, that asking for help is somehow just really weak. And there's a lot of strength and vulnerability. You know, there's a lot of strength and saying that, like, hey, can you lift up that that other end of the bridge with me, right? And so while you're in therapy, you really are, again, giving this invitation to be able to unload your feelings, your thoughts, sensations, having this safe space to be able to, and brave space to be able to really find ways in order to connect with what's not being let out. So I encourage everyone to go to therapy. I think it'd be very beneficial. So yes, you are actually very strong when you do ask for help. So hopefully that was that was okay.
Yeah. And then when you mentioned like asking for help and not feeling weak, it actually made me think of when you were talking about your experience at Prairie A&M. Like you said you needed affirmation and things like that.
Yes.
You really didn't reach out. So have you come full circle? Did you feel like if you asked for help, you were going to feel weak, or does that resonate at all, or a connection there?
Like when I was a kid, when I was younger, did I feel weak and therefore stopped me from asking for help? Maybe the words weak maybe doesn't resonate with me at the particular time. But I think what resonated with me at the time was that I have done it on my own for a while. And it was a sense of judgment of, but why can't I do this now? I used to be able to do this on my own and go out before practice, after practice, and again, put on a tape and then shoot around and get better. And why can't I do that now? Right. So it was a lot of, I think, self-judgment that was happening. It wouldn't be weak, but it just kind of more of like, I need to figure this out on my own. I was able to do that back then, but why can't I do this now? So that was going on for me back in the day.
When you say that, it makes me think of like even just what weak and strong mean, because it seems like strength is like almost like weak is the bad and strong is the good. But yet we can get applauded for being strong by staying in a unhealthy situation.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
I can be in a toxic environment, being verbally abused by a coach or a partner or a friend or whoever, even at work. And it's like, I can talk about it and it's like, oh, you're so strong for continuing on. Right. And so this weak and strong is so interesting because it's like, yes, you're getting beaten down and you're so strong to continue to stay getting beaten down. And we almost like applaud it weirdly in a weird way. But it's like, we're saying like, we're trying to like make somebody feel good about it. Like you're so strong, but am I being like, what does that really like coincide to and relate to? And I know that's a whole like, other conversation.
Yes,
that's
it is.
Came up for me when you mentioned that.
Yeah, It really is. I think about the first thing that come to mind is like hustle culture and like how we're conditioned to beat ourselves up, pull yourselves up by the bootstraps type deal, and still feel at the end of the day that you're not enough. And so we're kind of conditioned to just like, yeah, go, go, go. If I talk to myself a certain way, if a coach or somebody really like just puts the hammer in the nail, it's going to make you better. It's going to make you particularly stronger. But I don't think we realize the long-term impacts that has on our mental health. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's exhausting. We can, again, still be left with feeling like we're not enough. And so we're constantly pushing ourselves or being in these particular environments that are unhealthy. And then again, we're rewarded for that, which is a total mindfuck. So yeah, we need to extend that conversation at another time. But yeah, this is how kind of the cycle goes, even past like college or just your athletic experience.
Yeah, because even like say someone like decides to leave the team or a relationship or whatever, and it's like, oh, you weren't strong enough to handle it, right? And it's like, no, I love myself enough to not have to handle this.
Yes.
But switching that mindset, because if you're used to it, it becomes a habit, right? So it's like by me being in these unhealthy situations for myself, and I've learned how to take it on. Like it becomes normalized to myself, and I don't see like, it's like, oh, this has always happened, so it's not a big deal, right? But it is a big deal. So
it is.
Yeah, strong and weak. That is definitely a conversation that we can bring you back on for, and we can just talk about strong and weak and like what that means and like how we've experienced that, because I've experienced that, right? And I see people around me who are experiencing it, and even the language that is still like, we also reinforce that strength to be in unhealthy situations to ourselves. Like we self-talk ourselves to like, no, like it's okay. We play it down when it's like, but then you're telling me you're kind of like emotionally beaten up. So but moving on. Because we'll be here another hour.
Another hour
about that before I even get to our next question. But so like moving forward, like now you've opened your own private practice, and like what was that journey like from you? Also like just the emotional, the mental journey in terms of opening your own private practice and say, yes, I'm going to like do this and, put my name on something.
Yes, I know. Throughout my journey, I've had a lot of self-doubt, and I did not consider private practice. Here it goes again. Like I wasn't trying to be nobody's therapist. I had no desire to be, to have my own business. And, I have amazing supports that are around me. When my wife really was the impact of me going into private practice. When we first met several years ago, it was like, no, you need to have your own business. Like you need to have your own business. I'm like, no, like I'm totally good. Right. And so I started my private practice about 2 years ago. I would say about like 2 years ago. I was starting that. First, I was a part of like a group practice. And then with everything that was taking place with the pandemic, with when George Floyd got murdered, I really felt that I really wanted to expand and do my own thing. And so I really wanted to, again, have more of an invitation for women of color, in particular, BIPOC community, to be able to access me, to have a little bit more access in the mental health field. So I established my own practice, Therapy to Empower. And I honestly just jumped into it. I was just like, my wife was like, you need to do it. Come on, let's go. And I was like, I'm going to do it. Come on. I got this. Right. And so I jumped literally head first. And I knew, I was like, you know what? I gave myself permission to make mistakes. I gave myself permission to know that I'm probably going to suck at this. And giving myself permission to be patient, compassionate, and give myself some grace, because I've never done anything like this before. I don't know what it's like to start my own business. And so with that particular permission and knowing that I had the supports around me and even the guidance with other friends that had their own business, that I decided that, okay, we're going to do this. And so, I've been in private practice for about like 2 years. I right now specifically specialize in working with women of color that has a negative relationship with food and exercise. And even since now I'm a yoga instructor as of January 2020, infusing both of those two together. It was dips. I got a lot of, again, great supports, great coaches, mentors that I have around me to pretty much help me in this particular space.
So, okay, with going into private practice, you mentioned self-doubt. And I feel like that's something that, I would say most people experience, myself included. Like, what tools can you share for someone who may be experiencing self-doubt?
Yeah. Going into the space is this feeling of like imposter syndrome. Like, I don't belong here. I don't know enough to be able to hold this space for anyone. And so, tips is recognizing that you're not alone, to giving yourself permission to not know. You don't know what you don't know, right? Because this is definitely a new venture for you. Also connect with people that have similar experiences that you do. Understanding that when you have like self-doubt or imposter syndrome, it can really make you feel like you're alone. And then you come and isolate and X, Y, and Z. And so recognize that you are not alone when it comes to it. Really, and give yourself permission to be vulnerable, to communicate what you need, and how someone can particularly help you. Identify like where those where that self-doubt possibly connected to, right? I look at that because, that might be an old tape that you might be playing. And so just noticing it, right? Noticing it without judgment. So those things where I can really kind of, encourage people who has particularly that self-doubt, celebrate your wins. Oftentimes we're waiting on, we're very goal oriented. I won't celebrate until I reach this amount of clients or this amount of whatever currency. But we are missing a lot of opportunities to celebrate every single day, every moment. And so celebrating those wins will make you kind of reflect that, like, no, I do belong here. I'm worthy of this space. I'm deserving of this space. I will occupy this space by any means. And so celebrating your wins can also be just a really great tool.
Yeah, I like that. And then going back to imposter syndrome, is imposter syndrome just another word for self-doubt, or like what is imposter syndrome?
That's a good question. They might be one and the same. Like intertwined. Because when I think of imposter syndrome, mostly I just think about, it's like this really intense feeling that you don't belong in this particular space, that you're somehow a fraud in this space that you're occupying. And then because you're a fraud, there's doubt of your abilities to be able to perform in your authentic way, right? Mm-hmm. And so they may be really connected to one another.
Mm. Yeah.
Because like, could you imagine going into a party and you're like, I don't belong here? And you're like, but wait a minute, I got the same credentials. I probably got more experience than any of these people have been here, but I'm feeling like I can't occupy this space. What? Like, oh no, I need a doctorate, or no, I need this amount of currency. Oh no, I need X, Y, and Z to fill this, right? And so, yeah.
I mean, even just the things that you're listing, it almost seems like we might feel like we need something external to show that we belong here, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I'm like thinking like those are like the things, like we start listing like our own resume and we start looking,
Yep.
you know, outside. So that's when like the self-doubt starts to creep in.
For sure.
I do agree with, you know, having that, celebrating your wins. I know that can seem like goal setting, and we like, I need the top of the mountain, not, you know, like the first hill or the first climb or even the first valley. But it's really important to celebrate those wins, because, you know, it's the journey that makes it so fun, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And those are where the
100%.
great stories come from.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So then now, like you mentioned, like you're in a yoga instructor. So, okay, so here we go. You just been going down the timeline. Now we're opening our own private practice. And then why did you decide to become a yoga instructor? Like, why did you decide to get that as well under your belt?
Yeah, because yoga was the only or one of few ways that I can move my body that wasn't associated with weight loss. So, you know, again, with what I specialize in with negative relationship with food and exercise, I had to really reprogram even my own journey with my negative relationship with food and exercise. I had to really reprogram of how I viewed movement. So I used to say a lot that I hated exercising. I hated it. But in fact, I actually really loved it. I just hated the association that I had with it, which was associating with weight loss. And so about 2.5 years ago, I decided that I would never go on a diet again. And so with that, I had to now find different type of ways on how I wanted to move my body. So I stopped saying exercise and started saying move my body. And so I had to really kind of dig deep that like, okay, what are some movements that I could do that's not associated with weight loss? So hiking was one, and yoga was the second one. And so when I went into my yoga, like a yoga class with that particular perspective, I just fell in love. It gave me permission to listen to my breath. It gave me permission to listen to my body, and to be still. And so with that, I was like, hey, more people, especially BIPOC folks, need this, you know? And so I wanted to be able to occupy that space, and go and get my yoga teacher training, so that way I can open that door for other BIPOC community. So it was really transformative for me personally, and I wanted to again offer that for other communities.
And so I like what you say, like moving your body, not exercise. I'm gonna probably take that, you know, use that one too now. But so like, what's been your journey with like your body? Like, what did you always see it like you're trying to look a certain way, or with dieting? Like, where did that even come from for you to get to the place where it's like, I want to heal this part of myself and help others as well?
So it started back when I was a kid. You know, I never looked in the mirror. I would take showers with the lights off. I wouldn't look at myself, and I wouldn't look at myself for a very long time, probably until my late 20s. And so you would think like, Krystal, but you know, you put on lipstick, you might put on some mascara, but I'm not really looking at myself, right? And so when I got into college, especially with college basketball, if you think about it, you know, they tell you what to eat as an athlete, what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat. You need to lose this weight in order to play this position, you know, X, Y, and Z. And so that particular introduction to dieting really did continue well on after I stopped playing. And so I was a chronic dieter. I went on so many different diets. I was obsessed with my weight. I was always on the scale. I would be preoccupied with body image and food, and just restricting, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I was tired of taking before pictures. I was tired of not being able to eat what I wanted. I was just tired. And when I was really listening to my body was like, if it was talking back to me, stop, please stop. And so I made a promise to myself, and I said, I will never go on another diet again. This is not healthy. It's not helpful for me. And so end up getting a therapist to help me on with that journey. And so and that's kind of where I'm at right now, to be honest with you. And I have a very, very healthy relationship with food, with movement. And I'm able to really look at myself in the mirror. And it's been phenomenal ever since I've made that shift. And that's why I want to encourage other people in that space too.
How do you create that healthy relationship with food? And what does that really mean? Because I could hear like healthy relationship with food and think like, oh, you just eat a bunch of healthy foods, like what we coin healthy foods, like vegetables and things like that. But what does that mean to you, healthy relationship with food?
Not putting food on a moral compass, not putting food on like good food and bad food, right? And I think just starting there, recognizing that, how diet culture has totally impacted a person's perception of their body. And in diet culture, it's basically where it equates thinness with health, happiness, and things of that nature, right? And so this is where I see where we have to form a different relationship with it, to where I'm not looking at a box of cereal and be like, you're bad. I can never have you, or I can only have you on Saturdays. It's the only time I can have you. Right. and so, and shifting that, or this idea that I have to, I ate too much, so therefore I need to, lift some weights, and I have to go exercise right now. I have to burn this off. Right. This is what I mean by that. So when I speak on like healthy relationships with your body, food, and movement.
Gotcha. So it's like, I can say like, I still want to have a burger and fries and ranch and fried fish and those different things. And it's like, it's a mindset shift, actually.
It's a mindset shift.
A mindset shift, right?
Absolutely.
And do you feel like your mind also coincides with how the body receives the food as well? Like if I'm not looking at my food like, oh man, I shouldn't eat that, or don't worry, I'm already telling myself, like you said, I'm going to go work out after this, or tomorrow I won't eat as much, or this is my cheat meal, or whatever that is. Do you feel like once we already start telling our mind those things, that it actually creates even like how the body responds to what I'm eating? And then now that you have a healthy relationship with food, it's different, right? Like you're not beating yourself up. So now do you feel like your body has also responded differently, knowing that you can eat health, like whatever you want with this healthy for your healthy relationship with food?
100%. I feel like, with this mindset shift, which is really a mindset shift, honestly. And when you recognize sometimes it's not even about the food, most of the time, it ain't even about the food. And so, I had, what was I going to say? Yeah, it's not even really about the food. And when we shift our perspective and start actually listening to our bodies more, that's when a lot of the shift happens, right? So an example of kind of listening to my body is like, I may ask myself, or I've asked clients before, like, how do you know when you're hungry? How do you know when you're full? Are you connecting with that, right? Also, too, of recognizing that, like, hey, your body may say, if we're listening to it and really attuned, hey, you know what? I really want something crunchy. I want something hot or cold or salty or spicy, right? Like it's telling you, right? And what happens to you when you actually satisfy that, right? What comes up for you, right? Connecting the mind and the body, right? What happens for you in those particular moments? And so, and are you giving your body, I guess, what it wants to feel satisfied. Like, have you ever gone to like a restaurant, you ate something and you're like, gosh, I'm full, but I'm not satisfied, right? Like I can feel the fullness, but I'm just so, you know what would satisfy me is if I got that chocolate cake. Ooh, that would do it. Get the chocolate cake. And connect back and see, like, you know, I'm satisfied now. I'm good, right? And so versus what tends to happen, nope, I can't have that, right? And so I gotta wait until Saturday. And so what happens when you give yourself permission to listen to your body and say, like, no, I would feel a little bit more satisfied if I had that particular chocolate cake. It's not good. It's not bad. We're not putting food on a moral compass here. I'm just listening. I just really want something sweet. You know? So, and when we start to do that, we start to reduce the restrictive behaviors. And half of the time with the clients that I've worked with, and even myself personally, I don't even crave those foods anymore because it's no longer a golden ticket because I can get it whenever I want to. There's no more Mondays. This is when I start. And so I start back like on my fast or like diet or anything like that. I don't even crave them anymore. So if I do crave it, like a bowl of cereal used to be my vice. Oh, I used to eat like the whole box in like one day, right? Because I'd be like, no, I got to eat it all because tomorrow I'm going to start my diet. But like now, like I'm like, if I'm craving some cereal, just go buy some cereal. I eat it and that box will stay there for like maybe a month. I don't even touch it, you know, but it's a progress. I mean, it's a process. And it is a delicate process that I would say that takes some compassion, grace when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's really important. And there are like, even just having that relationship with food, like there's different, like there's diet, there's body image, there's like emotional eating, like there's different ways to like in tune, like with, you know, how and why I eat. So I feel like that's very important. And I'm so glad that you're doing the work. And then we're doing like a body compassion class with some students. What was that like for you? Yeah. And just share like, what things did you like share with them so that our listeners can also maybe get some tips?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a workshop for teens really on the same subject of building a healthy relationship with food and exercise and their body using, I created the ACE method. So ACE stands for body awareness, body compassion, and body empowerment. And so I meet with them every week. So I meet with them every week.
Wait, that don't start with A. Anyways, continue.
So I meet with them every week. It's a 6-week workshop that I do. And I introduce them to, building awareness around their thoughts, feelings, sensations that impacts their relationship with food. I have brought in a mirror and had them write out, like, what do you see? Right. And that was such rich conversations right there. How do we see our body? Yeah, yes. That's not to the end. That's not to the end. We work our way up to that.
So to look in the mirror and say what you see, that's deep right there.
Yes, yes. I introduced them to mindfulness and meditation. I introduced them to seeing their bodies with kinder eyes and ways to do that with, identifying, I would call inside voice versus outside voice. Inside voice is radical self-love. Outside voice is the societal pressures of having to be thin or look a certain way, right? And I just say, man, that's fucking bullshit, right? I want you to show up, I want you to end up after the 6 weeks, and I want you to show up and really reclaim your story. And so it has been such a phenomenal experience being able to be reintroduced to working with teenagers again, because I haven't worked with them in about like 2 years. And just to be invited into just a high school, it's just been really, really phenomenal.
What is radical self-love?
Oh, I would say that it is like our birthright to happiness and joy and worthiness. And sometimes that get muddled by, societal messages that says you should look this way, you should eat this way, you should blank, 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 right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how I see it's just like what radical self-love is. It is really steering away from the shoulds and what society thinks and feels that how you should show up in your life, and it's really a look of looking inward, more than outward.
Do you have a suggestion on like an affirmation that I can use instead of like, I should, like even I should or shouldn't eat this, or I should be looking like this, or I should have lost weight by now, or whatever that looks like how do I reverse that? Because it's so easy to go to the shoulds.
Yeah. It's two things. It's one of those things like, I am not my body. I'm not my body. And I have people do this assignment, right? I have them take a piece of paper and fold it in threes, right? Just kind of fold it in threes. On one column, I want you to identify your shoulds. List all the shoulds that you have as a relationship to food or a relationship to exercise. The next column, I want you to put why to answer the question to connect it to your shoulds. The next column is says who, right? The next column is says who. So you have should, why, says who. And oftentimes my clients will be like, me, I said. Okay. So I want you to dig a little deeper. Where did you get that message? When's the first time you heard that? Right? How was that connected to, how does that make you feel? What sensations come up for you at this particular time? Right? And I, after we kind of flush that out, I may reverse, I should to, I could eat that cupcake. I could go ride that bike right now. I could do that, right? X, Y, and Z, right? So now I'm switching it to more of an affirmation than I am this pressure that's connected to shame when it comes to the shoulds.
Yeah. And just going back to like the healthy relationship with food, but also moving your body and moving your body what feels fun or right for your body, right? Not everyone likes to lift weights or do classes at a gym or hike. It's just finding different modes. Maybe like you used to enjoy rollerblading or roller skating growing up, and getting back into those ways. Like I think that childlike inner child is always like the most fun because we were doing everything like with no thought in the world. We didn't care if we were going to fall or nothing. It was just like, I'm here to have fun. It's not like how I look doing this. Like it's really going out there and finding like what actually feels good to you and how you move your body, whatever that looks like.
Absolutely. And be, like you said, like be curious. One day, I think one part of the diet culture is like this really rigid view, right? And sometimes we use that rigid view when it comes to exercise. And where it's like, today I may not want to do leg day. Today, my body is saying, no, can you just stretch me? Today, my body may say, you know what? I really want to swim. Today, my body's like, you know what? Where's that hula hoop? I really want to do that, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Right?
Forget about that hula hoop,
I know. Be curious. Be curious about it. And that when we do that, we actually just, again, give that invitation for process versus goal oriented, right? Like after you reach this particular goal, we want to be able to expand past that particular goal that you may have as a relationship to movement. And so yeah, be curious.
Awesome. And then like what resources do you suggest or recommend for anyone who's looking to get more information on, being curious into this space that we're talking about right now?
Absolutely. There's tons of trainings. I just finished a training called it's Be Nourished. It's benourished.com. They have a million resources and trainings that they have. It's not just for therapists, it's for everybody. That's a really, really amazing training. I would say, purge your social media because there's a lot of different influencers that are out there right now. Let me think of some. One is Black.nutritionist is a really great one. DN Bond Yoga is a really great one. Sports, food, and mental health is a really great one. You can follow me on TikTok at therapist to yogi. You can do that. You can read books like The Body Is Not an Apology. You can read
Ooh,
books
that was a good
like,
one. That's a great book, actually. That's a really great book. That
It's
changed my
awesome.
life, actually, when I read it.
Yeah, and the workbook is phenomenal too. Anti-diet, Fuck It Diet. What's another one that I would say? Man, there's so many, but I think that's a pretty good start so far. And if you need any more resources, I can totally send that to you as well.
Yeah, send that to me so I can put all these resources in the link in the description of this video that'll be on
I got
YouTube.
you.
So if anybody has any questions, you can just go ahead and just click on the description and get those links. And before we wrap up, I got a couple of questions for you. But
Let's
first, I
go.
want to say thank you, Krystal, for being on the Mind Right Game Tight Show.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure as always. I mean, learning more from you, digging more deeper into who you are and, also your passions and, being able to support you and doing that as well. So what are the ways for people to get in contact with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Krystal Williams, and it's Krystal with a K. I am on TikTok, so it is Therapist to Yogi or in.session. You can also email me at krystal@therapy2empower.com.
Gotcha. And then going back, talking about our journey and enjoying the journey and those micro wins, I want you to share with us something you are proud of yourself about that has happened within the last 24 hours.
The last 24 hours. I'm like, what happened? What happened? Last 24 hours. Last 24 hours. Wow, like what did I do yesterday? Okay, I would say this. I'm proud of myself for this morning I was really nervous and anxious coming into this space, and I'm proud of myself for giving myself permission to have those particular feelings and making space for it, and not running away from it. So I did whatever I needed to do: yoga, meditation, smell some lavender, and also again expanding myself to actually feel those particular nerves and knowing that it's okay. So I'm really proud of myself for doing that.
And when you say about coming into this space, what space were you talking about that you're proud of yourself for?
Oh man, just being seen, being live and recorded and being asked questions. So being seen and giving myself permission to be seen. I'm really proud of myself for that.
Awesome. I'm so happy you felt all that and then you allowed yourself to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy.
And one last question before we go. You just have to finish the sentence. I am grateful for.
Something just came over me right now when you said that. I'm grateful for my dad. I'm grateful for him for believing in me, to open up the doors for my athletic abilities, for encouraging me to continue on with sports and just creating that open space for me when I had no idea what the heck I was getting into. And I really think with his guidance throughout navigating that particular space really helped me be where I'm at right now. So I'm really, really grateful for him. Beautiful.
I love that. I'm sure he'll be so excited to hear that you said that too.
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, I got tears in my eyes. So
yeah, me too. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's.
I wasn't expecting that.
That's what's so beautiful about it, right? Is allowing that brave space to happen and creating that, like what you talked about earlier, because we all want to feel, and it's okay to feel. Whatever that emotion that may be coming up at that time. So it's beautiful to feel that and see that, and others to see that and feel that and know that it's okay. And it's perfectly brave, and it's not weak. this is strength right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strength.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, thank you, Krystal, for a great conclusion to the Mind Right Game.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, share this video with anyone and everyone who may find something beneficial for them, which I feel like we all can learn something from what we just talked about today. But until next time, treasure yourself and shine.